Emotions are making me weak. That's what I've heard across 5 different conversations across the last 2 months about the way people utilize and carry their emotions. Now, I'm just unsure where this myth is coming from, and I'm going to unravel this mystery. My name is Stuart Tan. If you've not heard of me, I've been a 29-year veteran in the area of personal mastery, executive coaching, and I've helped people to elevate their sense of achievement, utilizing psychology and neuro-linguistic programming as a tool to get them ahead. In this video, I will cover some aspects about emotions and why you need to learn how to harness them in the right fashion rather than to just sweep them under the carpet. Joseph and Newman in 2010 did a meta-analytic study in the Journal of Organizational Behavior. What they found is that emotional intelligence was positively related to job performance. Of course, this suggests that with a higher tapping into our own emotions, we could perform much better, right? Also, Brackett and Mayer in 2003 in the Journal of Personality and Social Psychology found that emotional intelligence is positively correlated to interpersonal relationships. This has got very interesting implications because it can improve your ability to manage conflict with others, lead other people, as well as manage teams in a manner that is productive. In fact, in the Journal of Applied Psychology, Boyatzis, Stubbs, and Taylor in 2002 identified that emotional intelligence is positively correlated to leadership effectiveness. Also, a study by Chang and Daly in 2012 published in the Journal of Occupational Health Psychology, found that emotional intelligence is negatively correlated with burnout. With all of these fascinating articles of research that have highlighted the value of emotions, why is it that there's some people who feel that emotions are making them weak? Well, I have a few theories and I'm just going to highlight a few of them so that you'll be able to distinguish what it means to be emotionally intelligent versus being just purely emotional. Number 1, beliefs that emotions get in the way of effective decision making. Well, it is true that your emotional state does control the way you take action. And unfortunately, people who get emotional use emotionality as a means to play some kinds of games. They attempt to blackmail people, for example, as a means of a social contract. Hasn't there been a time where people just put you on the spot and you feel a little bit uncomfortable to a point where it makes you feel like you have no choice but to do something? I've encountered that many times where people utilize emotional blackmail as a means to attempt to get me to do something. Well, I've got some news for you. Emotionality does not equate to emotional intelligence. Emotional intelligence does mean that you're self-aware and you know how to utilize the emotions, push out good emotions, as well as draw back strong emotions where it doesn't help. So if you feel that emotions do get in the way, you're probably right. You're just not utilizing the right way of doing it because emotional regulation helps you to become even better and carve out your top. While it is true that the way your emotions function can interfere with your emotional state, all you need to look to is emotional regulation. Learning how to control your physiology by understanding the science of breath work, utilizing patterns of relaxing your cognitive stress through the use of meditation or even mindfulness. All of these are patterns of behavior that you can utilize in order to tap into better and more fluid emotional states. In fact, just last night I was having a coaching call with someone who didn't understand the power of anchoring. And all I did was to go through an anchoring process, which you can find down in the link below. All you need to do is to follow the steps in order to gain access to emotional states anytime you choose. There is also a challenge when it comes to feeling vulnerable. Whenever you have emotional states that are not very comfortable to you, you might feel like you want to avoid them. Sure, whenever I feel vulnerable, do I really want to stand and confront my emotions? Of course not. But the truth is, when I confront something that makes me feel weak and understand why I feel it, it actually gives me a greater sense of confidence that I can deal with it later on and not let it collapse on me when I least expect it. In other words, I have to study that limiting emotion so that I can regulate it. And all it takes is for me to experience what it means to be truly vulnerable. Brené Brown, who's very well known for her talks on courage and vulnerability, highlights this point very clearly in her TED Talks, which are highly popular. All you need to do is to acknowledge and accept that this is a vulnerable space for you, And you don't have to go telling the world how vulnerable you are. What it does though is it creates a sense of acceptance in the moment. So once you know that this is where you are, all you need to do is to move towards the direction where you need to go. After all, this is what David Goggins also mentions. By acknowledging the truth, you can now seek out what you ought to be doing. If you're a liar, you just acknowledge you're a liar and decide what you want to do instead. If you're weak, just decide that this is the truth. Where are you weak? And then you learn to get strong. This is important because a lot of people are just utilizing a fear of vulnerability to escape from the need to build emotional intelligence. In many places though, you are expected to overturn the idea of your own personal emotions for the sake of a greater community. I've seen that quite a lot, and a lot of males in particular that I know tend to go for this choice. It's not a bad choice. Sometimes the emotions just get in your way and you just need to get stuff done. And the truth is that if you keep getting emotionality in the way of your tasks, you're very likely to become underproductive. However, there's a caveat to this. The emotionality of carrying out tasks has to be in the context where you don't need to build emotions. Take for example the need to build out a house. If you're working on a log house on your own, there's very little need to be emotional. In fact, some people might argue that it's bad to be emotional at that point of time because you're working alone, and if you get so upset by the things that are happening in front of you, you might just have a log roll over you and die. So that's not really a smart thing to do, isn't it? However, all jokes aside, having a team to work on a house together requires you to have some kind of balance between task and relationship. And it's important to be able to pre-frame that kind of relationship so that other people understand where you're coming from. Now, there have been countless numbers of times where I've had to adhere to different kinds of rules and regulations, in particular within the armed forces where I'm still an active NS man. Whenever I go out and start telling people what I need done, they tend to have an understanding because we've established a working relationship over a long period of time. They know what needs to be done, and I don't need to hound them or chase them because they're intelligent human beings. The problem happens when there's a disjoint between a new policy and the way by which we work. Take for example this thing about safety. Safety is necessary. It is a task which is usually just devoid of emotional states. However, what I found is that by eliciting emotional states from people, they tend to take that safety message a little bit more seriously. So by diving into a little bit more of an emotional spiel, I can utilize the emotion to get people to do what I need them to do, simply because I framed it from the standpoint of something that will make sense to them, something that's rational, even though I make it emotive in nature. So you'll notice I use some words that are interchangeable. Emotionality is not emotions. Emotionality is not emotional intelligence. Emotional intelligence overall is self-awareness of your emotions, knowing how to drive it up and down as and when the context needs. And additionally, the ability for you to use the emotions that you experience are very, very important. And that does require self-awareness, doesn't it? I mean, hasn't there been a time where you felt like you needed to utilize rage and anger just to push you in a certain direction for a short while? Alternatively, wouldn't it be useful for you to utilize emotions in a manner that is mature, that will help you to become more persuasive as a leader, to become more effective as a confidant to other people? Now look, I experience negative and debilitating emotions on a regular basis. It's not fun. However, when I sit down and stare into the darkness, it tells me a little bit more about how I got into that darkness in the first place. It's important for me to use that as a means to turn and orient toward the light. So, as I always say, when you study your shadows, you know where your light actually is. So in all of this, what I've hoped that I can bring to the table is a recognition that you don't have to be emotional in order to be strong, but you need to galvanize emotions in order to create strength where you've never found. You don't need to cower from shadows and dark emotions, because by being vulnerable, you study a little bit more about what could have fractured you, and then utilize that as a means to learn more about yourself and to get ahead. If you want to find out more about emotional intelligence, I highly recommend Daniel Goleman's groundbreaking book on emotional intelligence that can help you to get ahead to the next level by learning about emotional intelligence, self-leadership, and also how you can use this to break through the old mindset that emotions are just for the weak. Truth of the matter is, it depends on how you use the emotions. Does it mean that somebody with a dagger is dangerous? Well, yeah, but dangerous to whom? To other people or to himself? It depends on how that weapon is used. So my friends, take a look at emotional intelligence very seriously. In my opinion, I think if I had learned about this and the nuances of all of the emotional intelligence literature when I was much younger, I could have become a much better leader, much earlier, much quicker. So go ahead, dive into this, learn a little bit about this new belief or new perspective about that emotions could actually support you if you knew how to use them well. So I wish you all the very best, and of course, if you're feeling that there is a sense of suffering, probably it's because you haven't learned how to elevate yourself yet. All I need you to do is to consider new perspectives and lean into it no matter how scary it is. If you do need a little bit of guidance, go down to the description box down below and register in my newsletter so that you can get advance notice about any of my trainings related to emotional intelligence and neuro-linguistic programming. For now, I hope that this information has elevated some of your thinking to a level that can potentially help you rise above any pressures and stresses. And once you're able to do that, it will probably assist you in taking actions for abundance. If you find there's anybody who can benefit from this, do share it, like and subscribe to this channel so that you'll be notified whenever I have further updates.